While you're desperately chasing people who barely notice you exist, there's a secret psychological principle that 97% of people will never discover. And it's the reason why some individuals effortlessly attract respect, admiration, and opportunities without even trying. The people who understand this ancient law are already living the life you're still dreaming about. And every day you don't learn it, you fall further behind. If you're tired of watching others get the recognition, relationships, and success that should be yours, then you're about to discover why your availability has been your biggest weakness. This isn't another self-help theory. This is the psychological warfare strategy that Machiavelli used to understand power, and it's been hiding in plain sight your entire life. Today we're diving deep into Machiavelli's Law of Scarcity, the ancient principle that reveals why disappearing strategically isn't about playing games. It's about understanding the fundamental truth of human desire. When you learn to rule quietly from the shadows, you don't just gain power, you become the power others desperately seek. The chase only begins when the prey disappears. But most people never learn to become the hunted instead of the hunter. The paradox of presence. Let me ask you something that might sting a little. When was the last time someone truly appreciated you while you were giving them everything? When did someone value your time when you were always available? When did someone fight for your attention when you were freely giving it away? The painful truth is, they didn't, and they never will. Machiavelli understood something about human nature that most people spend their entire lives fighting against. We don't value what we can easily obtain. In The Prince, he wrote about the delicate balance between being loved and being feared. But his deeper insight was about scarcity, the idea that what is rare becomes precious, and what is abundant becomes worthless. Think about your own life, the friend who always says yes to your plans. Do you rush to make plans with them? Probably not. You know they'll be there. The colleague who responds to emails within minutes, do you feel urgent about replying to them? Unlikely. They've made themselves so available that their availability has lost all meaning. But what about that person who takes 3 days to respond? The one whose schedule is mysteriously full? The one who seems to have a life so interesting that you can't quite figure it out? Suddenly, getting their attention feels like winning a prize. This isn't about manipulation. This is about understanding a fundamental law of human psychology that governs everything from romantic relationships to business negotiations to social dynamics. Scarcity creates value. Abundance destroys it. You've been taught that giving more leads to getting more. But Machiavelli knew that taking away creates an addiction others can't resist. The psychology of withdrawal. Here's where it gets psychologically fascinating. When you disappear from someone's life, even temporarily, their brain doesn't just notice your absence, it becomes obsessed with it. Neuroscience has shown us that the human brain is wired to pay more attention to what it doesn't have than to what it does have. It's called the scarcity principle, and it triggers the same neural pathways as addiction. When something we're accustomed to having suddenly becomes unavailable, our dopamine system goes into overdrive. We don't just want it, we crave it. We don't just think about it, we obsess over it. Machiavelli observed this in the political arena of Renaissance Italy. The princes who were always visible, always accessible, always trying to please everyone, they were the ones who lost power. But the rulers who remained mysterious, who appeared only when necessary, who kept their distance, they were the ones who commanded respect, fear, and ultimately, loyalty. You can see this playing out in your own life right now. Think about the people you respect most. Are they the ones who are constantly available, constantly sharing every detail of their lives, constantly seeking your approval? Or are they the ones who seem to have something going on that you're not quite privy to? The person who disappears strategically isn't being cruel. They're being smart. They understand that presence without absence is like speaking without silence. It becomes noise. When you're always there, you become part of the background. When you disappear, you become the focus. The moment you stop chasing, they start running toward you. But the question is, are you strong enough to stop chasing? The power of strategic absence. Now let's talk about how this actually works in practice, because this isn't about ghosting people or playing childish games. This is about understanding power dynamics and using them with intention. Machiavelli wrote, "It is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both." But what he really meant was that it's better to be valued than taken for granted. And the fastest way to move from being taken for granted to being valued is through strategic absence. Think about it this way. Every relationship, romantic, professional, platonic, operates on a certain economy of attention and energy. When you're always giving more than you're receiving, you create an imbalance. The other person learns, subconsciously, that your time and attention are cheap. They don't have to work for it. They don't have to appreciate it. They can take it for granted because it will always be there. But the moment you withdraw that constant availability, you shift the entire dynamic. Suddenly your attention becomes a commodity. Your time becomes valuable. Your presence becomes something to be earned rather than expected. This shows up everywhere. In dating, the person who's always available, always texting back immediately, always free for plans, they become predictable, and predictability kills attraction. But the person who has their own life, their own interests, their own schedule, they become intriguing. In your career, the employee who's always willing to work overtime, always saying yes to extra projects, always available for last-minute requests, they become the go-to person for exploitation, not promotion. But the person who sets boundaries, who has other opportunities, who isn't desperate for approval, they become the person worth fighting to keep. In friendships, the person who's always there to listen, always ready to help, always putting everyone else's needs first, they become the therapist, not the friend. But the person who has their own life, their own boundaries, their own priorities, they become someone worth making an effort for. You think being indispensable makes you valuable. Machiavelli knew that being replaceable is what makes you irreplaceable. The art of controlled distance. Here's where most people get it wrong. They think disappearing means cutting people off completely, burning bridges, or being intentionally hurtful. That's not strategic. That's just immature. Machiavelli's genius was in understanding controlled distance. It's not about disappearing completely. It's about managing your availability with intelligence and purpose. Let me give you a framework that will change how you approach every relationship in your life. The 70-30 rule. Be present and engaged 70% of the time, but maintain mystery and distance 30% of the time. This creates the perfect balance between connection and scarcity. The response delay. Never respond immediately to non-urgent communication. Even if you see the message right away, create a buffer. This isn't about being rude. It's about training people to value your attention. The selective availability. Be incredibly present when you choose to be present, but don't be available all the time. When someone gets your attention, they should feel like they're getting something special. The interest hierarchy. Not every invitation, request, or opportunity deserves the same level of enthusiasm. Show more excitement for the things and people that deserve it, and polite disinterest for those that don't. This isn't about being calculating or manipulative. It's about being intentional. You have a finite amount of time, energy, and attention. When you give it away freely to everyone, it becomes worthless to everyone. But when you make people work for it, when you make it scarce, when you make it feel earned, suddenly it becomes the most valuable thing in the room. The people who need you the least are the ones who will value you the most. It's time to become someone people need, not someone who needs people. The disappearance that transforms. Now, I want to tell you about the type of disappearance that creates the most profound transformation, not just in how others see you, but in how you see yourself. There's a difference between disappearing out of hurt, anger, or revenge, and disappearing out of self-respect and personal growth. Machiavelli understood that true power comes not from what you do to others, but from what you do for yourself. This is what it means to disappear and rule quietly. It's about building a life so rich, so fulfilling, and so purposeful for yourself that you don't have the time or the emotional bandwidth to be a constant presence in the lives of others. Your withdrawal is not a passive-aggressive game. It is an active investment in your own sovereign kingdom. You are not disappearing to punish them. You are disappearing to build yourself. And in building yourself, you become so magnetic, so centered, so powerful that they are forced to come to you. When you disappear to work on yourself, to build these skills, to pursue interests, to become more interesting, to develop your own life, that's when the real magic happens. Because you're not just creating scarcity, you're creating actual value. Think about someone in your life who seemed to vanish for a while and then returned, obviously improved. Maybe they learned a new skill, traveled somewhere interesting, started a business, got in amazing shape, or developed a new perspective on life. When they came back, they weren't just scarce, they were better. And that combination of scarcity and improvement is absolutely irresistible. This is what Machiavelli meant when he wrote about the importance of appearing to have qualities that inspire both admiration and curiosity. You don't just want people to wonder where you've been. You want them to be amazed by who you've become. The most powerful disappearance is the one where you come back as an upgraded version of yourself, where your absence wasn't just about creating space, but about filling that space with growth, learning, experiences, and self-improvement. When you disappear to become better, you don't just increase your value through scarcity, you increase your actual worth through development. And that's a combination that no one can resist and everyone will fight to be part of. The strongest people aren't those who never fall. They're those who disappear after falling and return as someone completely different. The quiet revolution. Here's what happens when you truly master Machiavelli's law of scarcity. You start a quiet revolution in your own life. Instead of begging for attention, you command it. Instead of chasing opportunities, they chase you. Instead of proving your worth becomes self-evident. Instead of fighting for respect, respect becomes automatic. But more importantly, you stop deriving your sense of self-worth from how much others need you, and you start building it from how much you've developed yourself. This is the deepest level of Machiavelli's teaching, that true power doesn't come from controlling others, but from controlling yourself. When you can walk away from anything that doesn't serve you, when you can be comfortable in solitude, when you can find fulfillment in your own growth and interests, that's when you become truly powerful. Because here's the secret that most people never learn. The person who needs others the least is the person others need the most. When you're not desperate for validation, people become desperate to validate you. When you're not hungry for attention, people become hungry to give you attention. When you're not seeking approval, people become eager to approve of you. This creates what Machiavelli would have recognized as the perfect position of power. You have influence without desperation, connection without dependence, relationships without neediness. People will start to notice that there's something different about you. They won't be able to put their finger on it at first, but they'll sense that you've changed. You'll seem more confident, more mysterious, more valuable, and they'll want to be part of whatever transformation you've undergone. The moment you stop trying to be chosen, you become the obvious choice. But are you ready for that kind of power? The price of becoming scarce. But let me be completely honest with you about something that most people don't want to hear. Becoming scarce, learning to disappear strategically, mastering the art of controlled distance. It comes with a price. The price is loneliness, at least at first. When you stop being constantly available, some people will stop reaching out. When you stop being the one who always initiates, some relationships will fade. When you stop being the person who says yes to everything, some invitations will stop coming. And this is actually perfect, because what you're doing is filtering. You're separating the people who valued you as a person from the people who valued you as a convenience. You're distinguishing between those who appreciated you and those who exploited you. You're identifying the relationships worth having versus the ones that were slowly draining your soul. Machiavelli understood that gaining power means losing the illusion of universal likability. You can't be valuable to everyone because being available to everyone makes you valuable to no one. The relationships that survive your new boundaries, your strategic absence, your increased standards, those are your real relationships. The people who put in effort when you stop making all the effort. Those are your real people. The opportunities that pursue you when you stop desperately pursuing everything, those are your real opportunities. Yes, you might feel lonely sometimes. Yes, you might second-guess yourself. Yes, you might be tempted to go back to your old patterns of over-availability and people-pleasing. But remember this: loneliness is temporary, but self-respect is permanent. The discomfort of establishing boundaries is momentary, but the power of having boundaries lasts forever. Sometimes you have to lose yourself in the crowd to find yourself in the silence. The question is, do you have the courage to be alone until you find people worth being with? The return of the transformed. And now we come to the most powerful part of Machiavelli's Law of Scarcity, the return. Because the goal isn't to disappear forever. The goal is to disappear strategically so that when you return as someone who can never be taken for granted again. When you've spent time working on yourself, developing your skills, pursuing your interests, building your own life, setting your boundaries, and learning to value yourself. When you return to the world, you return as a different person. You return as someone who doesn't need validation, because you've learned to validate yourself. You return as someone who doesn't chase, because you've learned to attract. You return as someone who doesn't beg for respect, because you've learned to command it. And people notice. They can't help but notice. The friend who used to take your constant availability for granted suddenly realizes they miss having you around, but now they have to make an effort to get your time. The romantic interest who kept you as an option suddenly sees you as the choice they should have made. The colleagues who overlooked your contributions suddenly recognize your value when you're not constantly volunteering for everything. But here's the beautiful part. You're no longer the same person who was desperate for their attention. You've grown beyond needing their validation. You can appreciate their newfound interest without being controlled by it. This is what Machiavelli meant by ruling quietly. You don't have to announce your power or demand recognition. Your transformation speaks for itself. Your new boundaries communicate your worth. Your strategic presence creates its own authority. You've learned the most important lesson of all. The person you needed to disappear from most was the version of yourself who didn't know their own value. You now understand the theory. But theory without action is just intellectual entertainment. It's time to become the person others can't stop thinking about. The daily practice of strategic power. Let me give you the exact roadmap to implement Machiavelli's law of scarcity in your life, because knowing the principle is worthless if you don't know how to apply it. Week 1. The digital detox. Start with your phone. This device has turned you into someone who's available 24/7, and it's killing your value. Set specific times when you check messages, maybe 9 a.m., 1 p.m., and 6 p.m. Outside those windows, you're unavailable. Watch how people's behavior changes when they can't reach you instantly. Stop posting everything on social media. Machiavelli understood that mystery creates intrigue. When people can follow your every move online, you become predictable. Share less. But when you do share, make it count. Let people wonder what you're doing in between posts. Week 2. The relationship audit list. Every person who regularly demands your time and attention. Ask yourself, if I became less available to this person, would they put in more effort or just disappear? The ones who would disappear were never really valuing you. They were using you. Start with the biggest energy drains first. That friend who only calls when they need something, let it go to voicemail. That colleague who dumps their work on you. Become mysteriously busy. That family member who takes your help for granted. Develop other priorities. Week 3. The investment phase. Now use all that reclaimed time to invest in yourself. Machiavelli wrote about the importance of appearing to have admirable qualities. Develop some. Learn something that makes you more interesting. Take up photography. Read philosophy. Learn a language. Master a skill. This isn't about becoming someone else. It's about becoming the best version of yourself. When you disappear to grow, your return becomes an event people anticipate rather than just another day. Week 4. The strategic return. When you do engage with people now, be fully present. Make your attention feel like a gift. Listen more intently, respond more thoughtfully, contribute more meaningfully. The contrast between your previous constant availability and your current selective presence will be striking. But here's the crucial part. Don't explain what you're doing. Don't announce your transformation. Let your behavior speak for itself. Machiavelli knew that the most powerful moves are the ones that appear effortless, the monthly maintenance. Every month, assess your relationships and commitments. Are you slipping back into over-availability? Are you saying yes to things that don't serve you? Are you chasing instead of attracting? Course correct immediately. Remember, this isn't about becoming cold or cruel. It's about becoming intentional. It's about making your time, attention, and energy valuable again. It's about training people to appreciate what they have instead of taking it for granted. The people who matter will adapt to your new boundaries and respect you more for having them. The people who don't matter will reveal themselves by their inability to handle your newfound self-respect. The challenge. So here's my challenge for you. And it's going to be the hardest thing you've ever done, but also the most transformative. For the next 30 days, practice strategic disappearance. Not as a game, not as manipulation, but as self-development. Stop being instantly available to everyone. Create response delays. Set boundaries around your time and energy. Say no to things that don't align with your goals. Spend time alone working on yourself, instead of constantly seeking the company of others. Use this disappearance to become someone better. Learn a skill. Read books that challenge you. Work on your physical health. Pursue interests that genuinely excite you. Develop parts of yourself that have been neglected. Watch what happens. Watch how people's behavior toward you changes. Watch how your own sense of self-worth transforms. Watch how opportunities start to appear when you stop desperately chasing them. But most importantly, watch how you become someone you actually respect. Someone who doesn't need to disappear to feel valuable because they've learned to value themselves. Machiavelli's Law of Scarcity isn't just about gaining power over others. It's about gaining power over yourself. And that's the only power that truly matters. If this video helped you understand something about yourself or your relationships that you hadn't seen before, make sure to like it and subscribe for more deep dives into psychology and philosophy that can transform your life. Because remember, when you disappear, your value increases. But when you return as someone who knows their worth, your value becomes undeniable. The question is, are you ready to disappear long enough to discover who you really are?